Hello, we are watching Avery.
Hello. Today my speech is going to be on the proper request for communication access and how it should not be a luxury, it should be a priority. So in the year 1990, the Department of Justice established the Americans with Disabilities Act. Its goal was to protect the rights and freedoms of Americans with disabilities. This law was to protect the rights of deaf people in requesting interpreting services and acceptable communication accommodations. However, most businesses do not know that this law exists or that they are to adhere to it. As a soon-to-be graduate of the Phoenix College Interpreter Preparation Program, I have heard firsthand stories of denials for communication access, having to write back and forth on a piece of paper with a doctor for medical instruction, being denied job interviews, and being told it would be easier to allow you to fail than to pay for a service. These stories are a common thread in the deaf community. A man named Matthew Dietz of the Disability Independence Group writes that in August of 2018, that 3 cases of hospital negligence to request interpretation services resulted in rewards and damages in Florida. While there truly should be no argument against this in the culture of representation, however, a big thing that people use to dodge requesting interpreting services is stating that it's too expensive, so deaf people are left to fend for themselves or hope a friend will come along to help out. This is illegal. Access to interpreters should be a top priority and readily available because everyone deserves proper communication access in every setting, but especially where it is a matter of life and death or financial growth. Today, I'm going to be speaking on the importance of communication access, the legality of denying this right, lack of representation, and the overall detriment of not giving someone the basic human rights to effective communication. Have you ever heard of the term autism before? The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines this as the discrimination or prejudice against individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. This word was coined in 1975 by a man named Tom L. Humphreys. Have you ever met a deaf person before? If not, is this the first time you are even hearing of the deaf community? According to the Hearing Loss Association of America, there are 48 million Americans with some degree of hearing loss. In today's society of representation culture,
Hearing Loss Association of America, there are 48 million Americans with some degree of hearing loss. In today's society of representation culture, deaf people do not have a whole lot of representation. Sure, shows have deaf actors in them, but it is always about deaf people overcoming adversity or surviving what we as hearing people deem as the impossibleness of surviving without the sense we are most dependent on. Much like people of color, deaf people experience the shame that comes from a lack of representation of themselves in the media. In 2019, a deaf woman named Ashley McGooey explains, "As a little girl, my favorite princess was Ariel, the Little Mermaid. Then, after the 100th time watching the movie, I came to a painful realization. Ariel doesn't have hearing aids, I can't wear my hearing aids underwater, and I felt ashamed of myself. At 6 years old, I knew I could pretend I could do all of those things in pretending to be a mermaid, but I couldn't pretend I could hear without my hearing aids." "90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents who don't know ASL or have never met a deaf person before," Boston University finds. They also state that 70% of deaf children are language deprived. Isn't it hard to imagine a full-fledged adult not having sufficient language to succeed in life? This does truly start in the home. However, you must understand it is not the parents' fault fully. I believe that due to the lack of knowledge and representation of the deaf community in media, it is exactly what attributes to this. 60% of these parents don't use an effective language strategy to help their child. Due to this, studies find that 7 to 10% of deaf high school graduates have a low-risk 7th grade reading level. Researchers from Oxford University note. Due to this, advancements and innovations to interpreting preparation programs around the country are working to expand outside the field, work with deaf consumers and hearing people from various occupations to allow everyone to develop mutual understanding of this process. To teach people to advocate for the request of interpreting services, for the interpreter to practice giving the patient the best communication care. Imagine if this type of technical training was a requirement for every field. Lawyers and doctors and police officers alike would understand how to help someone who is just a little bit different than themselves. Could you imagine being put in jail for 6 weeks without access to speak to someone who could understand you? According to CBS News, in 2014, a deaf man was accused of stealing an iPad that was later found. When he was arrested, he was denied an interpreter, went through medical screenings without, was made to sign confusing documents without communication access, and the jail's response to the ADA violation accusations because some guards know basic ASL and they have paper and pencils for communication, as well as stating it takes extra resources and creates additional security considerations to bring in an ASL interpreter. So obviously that means we must ruin someone's life and throw them away forever, right? As beautifully said by the man's lawyer who took on the case pro bono put it, to me, it's a matter of human kindness. You see a person in your care who's lost. How do you not help him? In my lifetime, I would like to see a world that reflects this question. That when hearing people see a deaf person in need, they will do whatever it takes to give them the accommodations they need, out of basic human kindness and compassion. The term altruism is defined as the belief in the term altruism is defined as the belief in or practice of disinterested and selfless concern for the well-being of others. If everyone just took this into consideration when they met a deaf person or were working with them, then the world would be such a better place and everyone would thrive and succeed just as they should, without limitations and barriers to communication. So please remember, always advocate for the right to equal communication access. Thank you.